welcome to the Christmas special of On the Couch, where we're joined by three men who probably could burst into song at any moment, but hopefully won't. Stu Dorans and Tom Dempsey. Welcome, lads.
Thanks very much. No problem.
Thank you, Laura.
The first question is hopefully a reasonably straightforward one, and it's going to be for the three of you, but maybe we'll go in the order you're sitting. Joe, what are your earliest GAA memories?
My earliest GAA memories is of Buffers Alley playing a county final in Belfield in 1952 junior. It was a 51 final actually against Blackwater, and I remember just a couple little things from it, and I remember getting the dinner in Hall's restaurant after it. I remember that quite well. But that's my first memory of hurling match with Buffers Alley.
And Dave?
Well, with Buffers Alley, I worked for...
Anything at all?
I remember going to a football match, the first time I was ever in Croke Park. It was a grounds tournament final with Wexford and Meath in football in 1948. And Meath had won the All-Ireland and had beaten Wexford by 2 points on the way. But now they qualified for this grounds tournament or whatever it was. The 98 tournament, I think they called it.
I think that's what it was, yeah.
And I remember being in the old long stand at the match, and Meath beat Wexford by 2 points again. Like, that's now would be one of, as far as the county team is concerned.
Would you be able to remember any of the Wexford players on the day? Or
I would, jeez, yeah. So Paddy Keogh, Willie Goodison, Nick Redmond, Jimmy Cody, Nicky Racker, Des Neal.
Yeah.
I remember 10 or 12 of them really.
Yeah.
Yeah, Comerford was in the goal, I think.
John Joe Culleton was probably playing, was he?
I'm not sure of him. He might have been only coming on to at the time. Nick Redmond was full back, Jimmy Cody corner back, Willie Goodison centre back. Wilkie Tarp was somewhere. I think he was a wing forward that day. And Des Neal, Paddy Keogh, Nicky was full. If I got a bit more time, I think I'd get
Well, I think it's a fair achievement to be able to name a team from 1948.
Yeah.
I think Bill Wilkie got put off, or was supposed to get put off with my father one day, was he? Or
He was. I remember
Yeah.
that was the following year. Well, no, it was in 52 as well.
52.
52 senior championship.
Yeah, your father and Wilkie got put off, and your father, Gerald, God be good to him, went out and sat down on the
And Wilkie
sideline.
wouldn't go.
And Wilkie wouldn't travel. And the referee, Murphy of Fern,
Bill
Murphy, he went back out then and invited your father back on.
Yeah.
And our father was running the old team that time, and Ger said, well, I'll do whatever Willie Doran says. And my father said to him, Gotcha, if you're able to go back on, go back on. And Ger went back on. And the Aidens now were after winning a couple of championships that time, and we were only up from junior, only best by 3 or 4 points. Should never best, really.
And your earliest?
Yeah, and I hope the lads don't mind me saying it, but I was, remember, I must have been very, very young, but it was the 70 county final, which I wasn't at. But I always remember the Forge Wall. I'd always, even at that stage, I was only 5 or 6, and maybe it's an illusion in my head, but I always remember hitting the ball against the wall, and I was doing that, just banging the ball up against the wall as a little fella, and cars came down by, and I remember it was Caroline Hamill, Caroline from Kilmuckridge, just shouted out that Buffers Alley had won the county final. Now it didn't resonate with me, it didn't resonate the day, and again, there was a lot of things happened that day, but that was the first one. The first game I remember ever being at was I think it was the 1970 Leinster Club final in 1971, and there was no health or safety that time. No. Sitting in the front seat, Joe, with Mick Butler on one side and my father driving, and I in the middle, going up. And that game will be remembered for a good few reasons as well. I think there was
no health or safety in Croke Park that evening.
Well, because I the boys would know more about it, but I always remember that I found when my father passed away that I found some paper cuttings, and one of the paper cuttings said that a scene in the second half saw all the Rhinos subs leave the dugout and go to the middle of the field for refuge beside the referee. So I maybe you'd know what happened better, Bill, that day, but it was a fairly fractious game at the Rhinos, wasn't it?
It was noisy now, to say the least.
It was in Grove Park. Or what happened? I don't know.
I don't know really what happened.
Tony and
Joe
Joe
Dooley.
Dooley got sent off.
And they wouldn't have been the culprits, really.
Not at all, not at all. Joe Dooley actually went to the Leinster Council after, and he said that he hit Tony, he admitted hitting him, but Tony didn't hit him back. But Hogan got 3 months or something as it happened. Tommy Loughlin, Tommy lost all his teeth that day, and he was only a sub, he was in the dugout. I don't know where he lost them, but he lost them anyway.
I think Tommy, I think they were false teeth.
They were false teeth.
It wasn't too bad.
Pádraig Horan wasn't playing for the Rhinos that day.
He was suspended.
He was suspended from a previous game. And Pádraig now was fairly rowdy enough on the line now. I think that he was involved in the start of it.
Right.
But whatever, anyhow, Tom come in contact with him anyhow. Tom got a belt anyhow, and his false teeth disappeared. So, but no, actually, there was lots of them. That time, you know.
Oh, sure, I tell you, if it happened now, we'd all be in jail now, that kind of way, you know.
There was an incredible passion, Laura and Peter, as you know, for Buffers Alley that time. But I remember being growing up, you know, and we were awful lucky where we grew up, really, because Bill or Joe or Tony or Father Casey, Henry, all those guys were all heroes of ours as a young fella growing up, you know, and to grow up in that environment, I remember, you know, we'd go to the phone box down in Kilmuckridge, we'd ring Tony or we'd ring Mick Butler or we'd ring one of the lads, talk to you for an hour and a half. Could be the night before a county final or an All-Ireland final, you know, and for young fellas it was just fantastic. But I always remember as well, very early in my time, and that the passion or the do anything to win with Buffers Alley was very evident. But I remember Joe, we were playing Castlecomer up in Brie one evening. You suffered a bit of a bad injury up there one evening.
I do remember that, Tom.
Mount Sion, Tom.
Was it Mount Sion?
No,
Castlecomer, was it?
Castlecomer, yeah.
We were about 30 points up, and Joe decided that he'd go back for a last minute penalty for our 21 from Castlecomer, but to put it mildly, I never saw a man in such pain, Joe. I said...
Got a belt at the wall,
It hit me in the sorest place.
and he got very little sympathy.
None.
Tony come back and they said to him, where the so-and-so were you going? You know, he playing up the field. And full time, we were about 30 points ahead. And he had to go back and get into the goal.
To stop this penalty or whatever.
To stop this 21 yards free.
Stopped it, all right.
He did stop it, yeah. It nearly stopped you, Joe.
For a while, anyhow, Tom.
And while there was, I suppose, 4 of you playing all at the one time, was there many other sibling, like, groups of brothers, bands of brothers on the team at the time, or?
3 Butlers. A couple of Murphys, Joe and Liam.
Well, Joe and Liam and Jimmy and Mikey used to be, they were there when we were playing intermediate. But in senior now, there was...
4 Dorns and 3 Butlers, anyhow.
And 2 Murphys.
A couple of Murphys, yeah, that was...
Yeah, and then there was... You had a couple of the other family of Murphys, Jim and Bill.
Yeah.
And some other family too. The other family, Joe.
Was it fairly
Kavanagh's maybe, Joe and Paddy
No,
Kavanagh, they were a bit later.
Yeah,
weren't they?
Joe Lee and Billy Lee.
Oh, yeah, Paddy and Joe Kavanagh were 2 more, yeah.
Tony and Jim McLean were nearly always the brothers.
Yeah. Family club, like.
Yeah.
And when you were growing up, Bill, what was the state of the GA in the parish at the time? Paint us a picture there as to what things were like.
Yeah, so they had won a junior championship in 52, it was actually 51 championship. And went senior then, that wasn't high now, the standard rank. But they had a lot of fine hurlers, but they won the junior championship, it was played in 52. Then we talked the previous day about St. Aidan's beating them in the first round of the senior. The following year then, what way was it? They played
Cushenstown.
53,
I think it was
Porswood beat him first by 4 points. And I remember I was a sub, 15 going on 16 at the time.
The Martins beat him then,
No,
I think.
they met Cushenstown then. There was only 3 teams in the group. and one to go through. And we played Cushelstown, and Cushelstown and us played a draw. So Howards would were automatically through. And I played in the match against Cushelstown and played on Paddy Keogh.
That was your first
15
adult
years
match,
old.
was it?
Yeah. That was my first adult championship match now. I wasn't 16 at the time. You know, I wasn't 16 till the end of the year.
And things would have gone on a bit of an upward curve in the subsequent 10 or 15 years then.
Yeah, we were regraded back to junior. But it took us a good few years to get going. We were always fairly strong. With 59, we run the Shamrocks close in Ferns one day in the county semi-final. That was the start of the real good Shamrocks team. And they were lucky to beat us. And they won the county. And intermediate now come in, and they won intermediate the following year. 2 years later, they'd won senior. But we still struggled. We went intermediate, and we struggled along in intermediate. Lost 2 or 3 county finals. Lost to the Hollow Rangers first. Davistown then. And no, the Martinsby's in the
Martinsby's, yeah.
Then we won it. And when we won it the first year.
65 we won it.
66 Fernsby is in senior. 67 we went to the county final and Ratnewer beat us well.
So,
and 68 then we come again and we won the senior.
Yeah. So the 67 would have been the first time Buffers Alley made a senior final.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
Would that have been treated as a major thing at the time, or was
it?
Yeah,
it was a big thing.
And that county final, would you believe, was played in Patrick's Park.
Right.
I'd say it was the only county final probably.
And it was.
I'd say it was the only one ever was played in Patrick's Park.
Oh,
wasn't it,
yeah.
Tom?
I'd say it was, Joe.
I don't think there's been one since anyway. I'm
No,
pretty sure.
No, and there won't be one in the future.
And Patrick's Park weren't as good or as well laid out as it is now.
It would have been only a reasonably new venue.
It was very new at that time, yeah. It was quite new at that time.
And what was the turnaround, do you think? Like, what changed it from going to bring it from a junior club to senior? Like, what was it, the group players coming up,
There was
different
a few
management?
families coming up, had, like we were on with, there was 3 or 4 Dorans and 3 or 4 Butlers. They were a big, they were a big help, that kind of way.
Were you playing in school as well and that
Actually,
kind of thing?
there wasn't much school that time. The record league came in 56. We actually played with one a year in the record league, because we went to school in Boulevard.
Oh, yeah.
And I played with a lot of them one a year chaps that time in record league. Tony played record. You never played record league.
No, I hadn't come in. Nicky Record started it
56.
after Wexford winning all Ireland.
Yeah, I think it was 56.
That's why it was the record league.
I remember we got to I think it was a semi-final, maybe the first year, and Nicky Record refereed us in Ferns. And so it was the greatest thing of all to have Nicky Record there refereeing,
There was
we were betting, I know, anyhow. I think actually, I don't know who the heck bet us. I think St. Patrick's bet us. Ballyup they called them that time.
There was a big spot as well, Joe. There was a scout out, but Tony Dorn actually told me, I don't know, it was the 62 county final against Davids. It would have been the Hollow or Davidstown. But the Alley were well bet that day anyway in the June
No, the Hollow we were close.
Yeah, maybe.
We only beat us in the last 5 or 6 minutes. That was very tight.
Davistown bet the lard out of us.
That was the one
Yeah,
then, yeah.
but we played the semi-final that year and we lost 6 or 7 between the semi-final and the final. It wasn't played for ages and ages. There was a couple went to England. Tony Dempsey would have been one of them now.
Yeah.
Jerry Dempsey even ended up in the goal that day, would you believe?
Well, because Tony was telling me that when they were short, I think they were short for one, they were under pressure, but my father arrived in Doran's yard and he was looking at your father, Willie, and himself were wondering where they were going to find players and who walked out of the milking parlour, only Tony. And my father just looked down. Tony was about 16 that time, Bill, was he, or been around that.
That was the first year.
That
we
was
got
the
to
year
it.
earlier.
Yeah. We bet Davidstown in the semi-final that
in
year.
Ferns.
Yeah.
My father looked
That
down
was
at
Tony's first match with adults.
he looked down at this big lump of a chap coming out of the milking parlour, and he said, "Sure, we'll bring that lad with us. He's big enough now to hurl at this stage." So I always said that my father was a great scout. It was a fair spot, so it was to spot Tony
And
Norton
He
now.
started against Davis.
We were only barely able to scrape up a team that time, though. No, one team now, you know.
And Bill, you mentioned that you would have played adult very young. Was there any underage at the time that you would have played before that, or what was the situation?
We had poor minor teams, poor juvenile teams. We had a middling juvenile team one year. Well, one of them years that we're talking about there. Father Staples was in Kilmuckridge at the time, and he got a team together. Well, now, I mean, we're getting a team together. He got a team, 2 parishes and 4 isolated players. And I'd say he had 6 parishes altogether. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, Owlert, Blackwater, I don't know where else now.
Mullingar or somewhere maybe.
You wouldn't know where. But there was the 4 isolated players
Wherever he
anyhow.
could gather them up.
And he put a good team together, but we played Gorey in the final. And they hammered us. Now the Gorey team would have included Oliver Goff at that time. He was in Gorey. He'd been one of the principal ones now. Now on the buffer, Kilmuckridge team, we called them St. Joseph's that time, the underage team. Now Jim Ormond, the Blackwater, would have been playing now. And just Sean Dempsey, 2 or 3, like Paddy Pender of Owlert. You know, there was, I can't think of them all now at all, you know, still I could nearly place the team for the went about, you know.
Yeah.
But they would have been ones that come into prominence in a few years after, you know. But we had poor minor teams after that now, and then we played with Ballygarrett. United with Ballygarrett. There was 8 of us played with Ballygarrett in the county, in the Gorey district final against Ferns. And we beat Ferns, and Davistown beat us by 2 points in the semi-final, and they lost to the Harriers by a point in the final. Now, so we had a strong team now, but there was 8 of our fellas, and the Ballygarrett fellas, there was only a couple of them come through with kind of.
Yeah.
They went away and one thing and another, you know, and there was only a couple of them really that played adult hurling, I'd say, after.
Yeah, and would there have been, when you were first playing, Joe, would there have been much underage, or what were your teams
I remember we had a juvenile team for a couple of years. We weren't much good, but we united with Ferns in my last. I played minor with Ferns in my second last year as a minor. The Shamrocks plays in Wexford Park in the semi-final. And the following year, I was a kind of a guest player with Ferns, I think, that year. I remember now there was a few from Onagear playing. Eugene Stafford was playing. I can't think who else. But the following year, the Ferns and the Alley more or less united. The 2 parishes, they joined for about 50 yards up above Bill's place in Mount Howard.
Right, yeah.
And Ferns is a good team, and we bet Nafina in the county final, but they objected to us. Harry Reinhardt, the boss Reinhardt, was a few days over age or something.
One day, I think.
Right.
And the FINA took the match from us.
Would there have been much of that amending birth certs?
That was mild.
In the semi-final, we had beaten Davidstown. Well, I think they called themselves Balnavari that time. But the year previous to that, again, the first year I heard minor with Ferns, I happened to play a juvenile match with Gorey that year as well.
All legally.
Go to school in Gorey.
And I was in Gorey one evening, and these 2 fellas arrived on a motorbike. They were looking for Jack Shield, the county or the district secretary. But I knew who they were. Anyhow, they weren't from our way of thinking. I directed them to Cortown anyhow. I told me lived in Cortown.
And just to get back a little bit to some of the success of Wexford in the 50s, what was it like as a young lad growing up and looking at these guys winning all, or hearing them maybe rather than looking at them?
It was great. They were really looked up to, that 50s team now. Really looked up to. They were the greatest men of all, even though didn't win the All-Ireland, what, the 55 was it? 55 and 6. But in the early 50s, sure, Tip beat him in a final.
51.
51 final. I'd say that was my second time in Croke Park. They beat Galway and then Tip beat him. There was great excitement for that now. But Wexford, they kind of didn't perform on the day. But Tip were outstanding. They won 3 in a row at that time. John Doyle, Pat Stakelum, all the big names from Tip were playing. And they were outstanding at the time. But Wexford didn't get back then till 60. After won 155 and 6. But didn't get back again till 60. There was a period in between there that didn't go well. Brian, a lot of lads tried, a lot of fellas, and they weren't a great success. But they got the thing going in 60 and put a good team together.
And you were on the periphery of things in 1960, Bill, were you?
I was playing junior with Wexford in 60. And
would the juniors would you have had much to do with the seniors at the time, or was it 2 separate groups, or would you have done a bit of training or much together or anything like that?
I don't think I trained with him twice altogether. Because, you know, even with the junior and intermediate teams that I was on, we hardly ever got together.
There wouldn't have been a big emphasis on training that
No,
time.
No really organised training much at all. Very little.
And I'm told you were a sub the day of this famous Battle of New Ross down in New Ross. Is that right?
Yeah, there was a few of us that had played junior and were coming onto the intermediate team. We're in the subs now. I can think of myself, Johnny Walsh. Who else?
Sean English. Was he
Yeah, he went away quick. Yeah, there was someone else as well now, a third one that wasn't on the junior team, Tom Guinan. We were 3 or 4 of the younger lads, and we were in the subs now, that day in Ross. Yeah.
Well, what happened?
Well, it was tough now. Well, it was all tough that time, but of course open sideline and everything else. And they were really dogging the hopper.
Right.
And the hopper was hit 13 around the 21 and he going through. And I remember Rackard went in, and it wasn't that he was going in after the Corkman, he was going in into the hopper. But I'd say the crowd thought he was going in after the Cork fella.
The Cork lad.
It was Jimmy Braun.
No, it wasn't. It was Dennis O'Riordan.
Yeah, Dave was involved as well. But the minute Rackard were in on the field, the whole sideline went in after him.
We were only chaps, and my father brought us up, right up behind that goal, the far goal in Kennedy Park. Because there was such crowd in it, but with a view up there, right in front of the square.
It was right down at that
But
end.
it was the Dennis O'Riordan lad now that scocked them on the way in that side. And Rackard, I'd say, only ran into the hopper.
He was more or less running into the hopper.
Your man confronted him on the way in now, you know. And with that, it was a good few went in.
We were in there, good food. Everyone in Ross was in.
So
the pitch was black.
It was covered in people.
Yeah. But they got it going again.
Yeah.
I don't know how it was done.
Billy Rackard and Eamon Golding,
They boxed.
They were sent off and had a kind of their own private little war out behind.
Between the bank in bank there in Ross and the dressing rooms. And that was after the match, because there was a circle and they were up in the banks, there was a good audience. And they slugged it out.
Good job you weren't out that time, Tom.
I tell you what, I'd have been the 12th man in, John.
So they call it the Battle of Ross.
Yeah.
You know. And someone was telling me here lately about being down the town in Ross after Ross were in the hotel there, opposite the bridge. It's gone now, the Royal Hotel. And they were after Ring's blood anyway. But Ring was at a window upstairs and he shouted down at him what they were and what they weren't, but he got the answer back, we stopped you from getting your 10th medal. We were good enough to stop you from, he said you were never any good. But they said we were good enough to stop you from getting your 10th medal. That was the answer he got.
And the following year, Bill, you played in an All-Ireland intermediate final. What can you recall of that particular run?
Got away with a tight run that year now. We beat Kilkenny well in the first round in Kilkenny, and we beat Offaly. Tight against Dublin in the final. Dublin had a few great players like Brian Cooney and Mick Birmingham. Fellas that actually played with Leinster the following year now. But we only beat him by a point. Played Tipperary, and we had a draw with him. I was telling you beforehand, Peter, about it. Remember the incident with Shanks and the free.
Yeah, you might as well tell everyone if you want.
But time was up and we were a point down. And we got it. There was a bit of a schmozzle went on up on the 21, right out on the sideline. And the referee blew the whistle, and of course both sides was claiming the free, but he gave it to Wexford. I know Shanks got the ball in his hand and he stood over to it. I can see him still the way he held the hurl, backhanded, and claiming the free. And a tip lad come and belted it away. And Jimmy Langton was refereeing it, and he went and got the ball to replace it. But when he had his back turned, Shanks backed up, and he went in nearly 10 yards, and he stood the very same way as Langton had left him. He come back and he left it down at his feet.
10 yards closer.
Shanks walked away from it, and Lynch come over and tapped it over the bar.
And that was what put you...
And that put us into the final. We beat him in the replay.
Yeah. So that was an All-Ireland intermediate victory.
That was the home final, they called that.
Yeah.
And we played London in the final in Wexford Park.
Yeah.
And we beat them well.
Yeah.
I played on Paddy Egan of Galway, Billy Duffy of Galway was playing. I don't know, different county men, They had previously played with county teams.
And of course, that time the rule was if you won the All-Ireland, you couldn't play in that grade the following year. Wasn't that correct?
No, you had to stand down.
Yeah.
So they couldn't pick me the following year. I was still eligible. The following year then again, in 63?
63.
You were both on that, I think, were you?
Yeah.
And we won Leinster and Tip beat us. Now...
Tip beat us down in Waterford.
Tip beat us, and now we still had to stand down the following year because we had won Leinster. So in 65...
You were back again.
I come back again and we won Leinster. And Cork beat us narrowly. We had Cork beat. We should have won All Ireland.
Well, that was in Patrick's Park, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I did that.
I can't remember who Cork had. Charlie Cullinan was one name I can remember was playing with Cork. He was a senior player. And there was someone else as well I can't really think. But we kind of should have won with a very strong team now.
What positions did you play in?
Sorry?
What positions did you play in that
Centre
year?
back, wing back,
I was
corner back.
The first year in 63, I was a wing back. I started on Babs, and he left me early on. He went in, I'm your man here.
You did a good job enough, did you?
He only stayed 10 minutes or so on the wing, and
he managed to keep the boots on that day.
No, I didn't keep much tabs on him. I got a belt on the head, I remember, around the time he switched in. What blood went everywhere. That time, I tell you, I can't remember much about the match. I was kind of half concussed.
Yeah.
But that time there was no testing or anything else.
Yeah.
Went in at half time and washed and got a new jersey and come back out again. I didn't know where I was. And Tip beat us anyhow.
But despite that loss, 65 was a memorable year for you, Joe.
Oh yeah, we won 21 in 65.
The only time Wexford have ever won the All-Ireland under 21.
Yeah. I played in 64 against Tip.
Yeah.
And they hammered us in Nolan Park. I played on Mick Roach. and 65 then I played again. And yeah, we bet Kilkenny in early in Leinster that year in the first match, actually, second match. I think we played Wicklow first, and Wicklow got no score against us in Gorey. And we bet Kilkenny. Now Tommy Welch would have been playing with Kilkenny that year. I don't know who else.
I think Jim Tracy.
There was a fella, Senan Cook, he played a bit after with Kilkenny, Class Dunn. And we bet Dublin in the Leinster final in Croke Park. I played on Jimmy Keaveney.
Right.
Yeah.
Better known for his football.
Yeah. And we bet Antrim in the semi-final, and we won the final fairly handy. And that year now, Babs was still playing that year. I think Francis Loughnane might have been still there that year. He had been there the first year anyhow.
And of course, under 21 was still a relatively new competition.
Oh, it only started in 64.
Yeah.
But Wexford had never won it since.
Tony
played again in 66 and sure went to 3 matches with them in Cork before Cork met him.
Yeah.
That's
Give you first taste of big success then. After that then. And what about yourself, Tom? You played under, do you remember much of under 18 and 20?
I played probably 3 years minor, I played minor when I was under 16, but the first team was probably the best minor team I ever played on in 81, and we Kilkenny beaten really in the Leinster final. Same day actually, the Tony got carried off, do you remember, against Offaly in the senior final. And so we played that day, and I got cut myself. I went off and came back on again after being stitched. John Codd, who was probably the best minor hurler in the country at the time, he went off after 15 minutes as well. And we were playing, Mick Morrissey was playing for Kilkenny, Mick's guard here in Wexford, but with about 5 minutes to go, we were fairly well in command, and the linesman gave a line ball the wrong way, and of course inevitably it ended up in our net straight from the line ball, and it basically knocked us out of the championship. I think Kilkenny went ahead, won the semi-final by 20 points, and the final by about 7 or 8. We were the best minor team in the country, but usual Wexford. 82 was pretty non-eventful, and then 83 played in the Leinster final, and the famous Niall Quinn scored 3 goals and 5 points against us that day. And we were probably good, capable of winning. Ray Murphy scored 3-3 for Wexford, but some very good players now that time. We would have had, I suppose, Fintan O'Leary and Dermot Prendergast, and there was a lot of very,
was
very
Eamon
good players.
on that?
Eamon wasn't on that team.
No.
He wasn't.
No, he came after that.
Mo Rourke, Austin Finn. There was a lot like Johnny Murray. I think Johnny was there.
He was.
Yeah, Vinnie Murphy might have been there as well. So, but we were a bit unlucky. Then played under 21, 4 years, very little success. But the last year, then we beat Offaly in the Leinster final, and went on to the All-Ireland final. I was, believe it or not, a bit like Bill here. I was playing centre back that time, so. All the good players play centre back, Bill, so they know. And I was playing centre back, and we played Galway in the All Ireland final. Actually, Tony Doran was selector on the team that year, and Galway had been beaten in the All Ireland final, senior final the week before. I think they had something like 6 or 7 players: Anthony Cunningham, Joe Cooney, Pat Malone, John Cummins, that series team. But they beat us by about 4 or 5 points in the final. But that was really the synopsis of my underage career. Played in the college's All-Ireland final as well, which, to my deep regret, I took a 70 with time almost up, landed it in the goalie's hand, and we drew with St. Flannan's. Were beaten on a replay and that, So
replay was down in Thurles.
Down in Thurles, yeah, it was because so. It was. We were the typical. We mirrored everything that was happening in Wexford at the time. Very unlucky to lose games, or maybe not win enough. But look, have the Leinster under 21 medal, colleges medal, and that, but that wouldn't have been as successful as it was.
And when you started then playing senior with Brazali, where was the team at that point?
I was very lucky, I suppose, really, in that Joe was just saying that he retired. Well, I won't say retired, Joe, from senior.
Retired about 6 times. Yeah.
He came back many years as well. I remember actually, Joe, stopping you on the main road one day. I'd say you were close enough to 50. Do you remember that day? And Wally Byrne and Bunclody.
Oh Lord, I do.
Joe was going home with the rashers to Betty, and I stopped Joe and said, Joe, we've only 14, so fairness to Joe, it just shows you about the Dorns, up, got the boots back in, and I remember the first ball, Joe was running one way and Wally, and they didn't see each other, and just literally Wally, he was a big man, like, and you literally, I actually thought you were dead, Joe. I didn't know I was going to say the Betty that day, now I'll tell you.
I got a new mouth anyhow, but it was going the other way.
Well, as Bill was saying, there was blood everywhere that day, I'll tell you. But I remember looking down at you, thinking to myself, what am I going to say to Betty? I go up after pulling it. But no, I came on, I was very lucky, I came on to the 4 in a row team.
So you won the
82.
junior.
We won the junior
with me.
with together that year,
And
Joe,
then
yeah.
you came on to the senior team for what, semi-final was it?
So, yeah, I came on for the Harriers game, and
yeah,
it was
yeah.
it was like coming on to, like,
We couldn't get him off of it.
it was on for long, but actually, funny, we won the junior final, played the Shelmaliers, who've seen great success in the junior final that year. Joe, you were full forward, and I was
right.
wing forward, but the Shells were very annoyed because I'd say we had 3 or maybe 4 or 5 fellas that won senior county medals later on in the year.
Yourself, Paddy Kavanagh, Perry Butler.
That's right, yeah.
You were all promoted for the senior semi-final the following Sunday.
Yeah, it was funny, Joe. The boys were telling me from the Shells only the other day that Paddy Kavanagh was playing fullback for us in the junior that day, but Paddy had a beard and he was a great fullback. I mean, in fact, he was a fearsome looking fullback, even though Paddy wasn't dirty. But Peter Ryan, Peter's a famous character, was playing full forward for the Shells that day. He was only 17 or 18, but the boys were discussing the sweeper system seemingly in the pub one night, and Peter said that he created the sweeper system because he said he went up that day and took one look at Paddy Kavanagh. He said went back to his own half back line. He said and started hurling for the rest of the day now. But we were lucky. We came on. I mean, for me to come on that time, you had you had Tony, Mick, Peary, Henry, Colum, all those lads, like just legends that you'd never remember walking around the parade outside here in Wexford Park, and I was just saying, how did I end up standing here in a parade? Mick Jacob and all those lads on the far sideline. But we also, it was the beginning of a raft of excellent young underage players coming along as well, like, the Whelans, the Donahues, the Sinnets, the Gans, I'm only mentioning a few of them there, but there was a great mix then, because we had the old, we had the new, and we had the lads coming along, and we won 4 titles. I was so lucky because I wasn't for what I was doing. We won 8 senior hurling titles in the first 10 years that I was playing, and nothing to do with me. And then we won 3 Leinsters in the Club All Ireland. Probably could have won a couple of Club All Irelands really during that period.
Yeah,
really,
we unlucky didn't win.
86, Joe.
Yeah,
and we had the Rhinos
actually
beaten.
threw it away.
Yeah.
Had the Rhinos beaten
in 82
in
Kilkenny
Park, yeah.
in 82, and we just had them beaten, and I think we're 7 up with maybe 10 minutes to go, and just that little old thing of never having won a Leinster kind of came back to haunt us maybe, but just some fantastic players that time,
I remember, I think I was a selector that year.
Yeah.
And you scored 2 goals in the second half.
That's right, yeah.
And I was passing back at the back of the goal when you had kicked in the second one.
Yeah.
And Damien Martin was picking up out of the net. He says it'd be worse if it was 3.
Yeah. And we were unlucky, Joe.
They snaked it after. Yeah. You were unlucky that day.
But talking about that, and the boys remember probably the best. I hope you weren't suspended for it now, but the best club hurling game I ever saw, I think, was James Stevens and Buffers Alley in the 75 Leinster semi. You had been put off in the county final.
No, I don't
want to. But I'm glad you were back. I'm glad you played on fan that day. You were midfield that day. But
no, I was full forward.
Oh, you were full forward, yeah.
They shifted me up there when I was best.
And Joe, you were midfield, Joe, were you?
I think I might start at wing forward that day on Joe Hennessy.
Yeah, because I think that was the year that we probably could have won an All Ireland club title as well.
Last year they scored a goal last book of the game, a goal that everyone stood back till they had rolled over the end line wide, and it didn't roll over the end line wide. Ended up in the net.
Yeah, and like the quality of them that time, they won the All Ireland, and like Chunky Liam O'Brien, Brian Cody, Mick Crotty, they're just an incredible team. Joe Hennessy,
Eamon Morrissey, the half a dozen the Kilkenny senior team on that team.
And we were a better team that day, weren't we? We should have beaten them, but there were some titanic struggles with Buffers Alley that time, and like in some ways, and I don't know what the lads think, but between say 68 now and probably 92, maybe in ways the Alley didn't get credit for the hurlers they were, because there's no point in saying but Buffers Alley were a tough team. You know, they were, but there was some marvellous hurlers with the Alley that time. I mean, not just picking one man out, and my father often talked about Bill Murphy. Bill and Joe, he must have been, he was just an exceptional player. Never played for Wexford. You know, and I think it was a Seamus O'Leary was so skillful. Lads like that.
Yeah. Well, you see, I suppose you don't, like, you can be a tough team, but you also have to be good enough to put the ball into the net or over the bar. So I suppose it has to be everywhere. But the first one came along in 68, Bill, and that was after being beaten in the final in 67. So there was obviously a bit of a, there must have been a feeling around at the time that we can actually do this and we can.
Yeah, we had a very young team as well. 68, did we win 21 that year? I think. Yeah, we did. I think there was about 5 or 6 who had won 21. You know, so we were a young team at the time. Now there was a few. Joe Murphy now had come on the sub in 1952. He was only 18 in 52.
Yeah. And
Joe was captain that day. But Joe just come in. He mightn't have been on the team. Paddy Sinner was captain and Paddy was sick. And Joe came in at the other end of the field. It meant a few switches all right.
Liam Murphy was playing as well.
Liam Murphy
was
corner
forward.
But Joe come in and he captained the team in the final. I think they made him captain because he was the oldest that was there, and he was replacing the captain.
Yeah.
You know.
So we were 8 points behind with 8 or 9 minutes to go, and Bill Murphy scored 2 goals and 3 points. In the last 8 minutes, we won by a point.
And who was it against for those who?
Harriers, yeah.
And they would have been a successful team in the 60s, the Harriers.
Oh, yeah.
They would, yeah.
The Harriers had a lot of young fellas coming, Ned Buggy and Heffo, Liam Bennett. Jim Foley, them fellas were.
They'll always contend. As I say, I live a bit of my life in Wexford Town, but they'll always contend that Willie Murphy shouldn't have been sent off that day. But I know it's not something. Willie was sent off. Joe, was he?
I thought he was sent off for very little time.
Yeah.
Now.
He was sent off, but I suppose
we have an interaction with Tony.
He
now
made a mistake. He had been involved in a couple of incidents before it, and now he was in a minor one, and he was sent off.
I thought he was unlucky now.
Yeah, he was behind unlucky.
And the second county title in 1970 would have been tinged with a bit of sadness for both of you. Do you want to tell us what happened there, Bill?
Well, sure, we were playing the Shamrocks, and now that was probably our strongest team ever around that period. And we were playing the Shamrocks, and Shamrocks had won it the year before by a big score. They'd beaten us by a point in the semi-final, wasn't it, Joe?
Yeah.
And they were playing them, and all was
the best friends in the final.
Going to be a needle game. That's there, and ended up we won it by 30 points or something. But that, my father died during the first half of that match, and I put a cloud over everything. Kind of, you know.
Yeah.
That was we kind of half knew at half time.
Yeah, it wasn't something someone told you, but you had an idea. Was
yeah, I knew fairly well.
I remember asking Father Brendan Redmond, who was in Bowling that time, was selector, and I said to him at half time, "What's the story?" He says, "It's bad," and that was as much as he said. And he says, "What are we going to do?" And he said, "I think he'd want us to finish it." And so I knew, you know.
Yeah.
I think we won by about 30 points the same day.
Yeah.
I'd say it was one of the best displays we ever had.
I had seen the stretcher going down the line, and John Welsh, our uncle, who was at the match with my father, I saw him going behind it with a hat in his hand. I knew damn well.
That was his hat.
Yeah.
And normally at the start of the interviews we ask about the family, but he was a GA man himself and would have played a bit, and there was a family tradition before he came along.
Yeah, he won a championship in 1928. I think that was in junior. There was intermediate that time. They lost an intermediate final, I think, in 32 by a point. Played a good bit with Wexford along that period.
Wexford only junior team that time.
Wexford weren't good at the time.
Yeah.
And I often heard him saying about riding the bike to Wexford Park to play with Wexford that time.
And would he have been like a driving force behind you getting involved, or
We hurled above in our field.
yeah?
We hurled as chaps in it, and we kept hurling in it, and we were hurling in it till we got the new pitch.
Yeah.
And that was opened in, we got the new pitch in 70, I think. Yeah, 70.
71, yeah.
Yeah, 70, 71. Yeah.
Around there, yeah.
And of course, it's one of the finest facilities in the county at the moment, Joe, with the 3 pitches and the indoor
Sure,
arena.
yeah, it's a good setup now, all right, yeah, with the 3 pitches there. And you know, in the summertime, you need all 3 of them, because I've seen nights
There
now.
don't be room down there in the summer.
I've seen nights now that were trying to fit in maybe 2 underage games on the one pitch, because all pitches were gone, you know, that kind of way. But
It's great to see such vibrancy still within the GA as such, like with all the other
if we
things that children could be doing.
if we could get back to winning ways now with our adult teams, that's really what we need to.
Would there be, it's hard to know how to phrase this question, but would there be anything that might have meant that the thing went on a bit of a slide since you last won one, or why there's such a big a gap, or was it just a case of we had a good group, a really good group for those years, and we were really successful?
Things, I don't know, I think things go in cycles.
Yeah.
You know, you'll have a bunch of fellas will come at the one time, and maybe there's a bit of luck attached to it as well, and you get into a winning way, and you know, and then you know, maybe you'll have leaner times too. And I think all clubs experience that every now and again. You know, some people would say to us now that we took our eye off the ball with youngsters and underage. Possibly, maybe a little bit we did too, you know. But I don't know. I think like there's humps and hollers, you know, and that's really what.
Yeah, I think, Joe, that too, if you look at the hurling tradition or whatever in the county, Adamstown, the 40s, you know, had a huge dipped a bit. You know, I suppose the Aidens, Ratnewer to a certain extent now, they haven't dipped. But, you know, it's a couple of years since they won a championship. Buffers Alley are the same. And I think if you look, say, some of the more recent teams, like the Martins, there was a real group of young players came. And I think the Alley were the same. You know, first of all, you came with the Dorns, the Butlers, those guys in the 60s. And then there was likes of, you know, even just to mention people, but the likes of Joe Kinsella and maybe my father, Billy Lee, Paddy Sinnott, people like that drove the underage while the senior team was getting strong. Then you had the likes of a kind of a Sean Whelan group era, you had maybe Paddy Donoghue, John Gann group, Paul Gann era. You had a very, very strong group of underage coming, and very strong families as well. And that sometimes you go down. But I think there are signs, there are green shoots in Buffers Alley at the moment. And I mean, the under-19 final, anyone that was witnessed it here, probably the best all-round performance from an under-19 team, and or of that age group, 21 or 19, whatever they're going to have it over the next couple of years.
Yeah.
But I think that there's some green shoots there with Buffers Alley that showing that there's a kind of there's going to be a little bit of a lift again, a kind of. But I agree with you, Joe. I think it's a natural progression. Sometimes you're not going to keep it there the whole time, like, you know.
There's going to be interest when you had the likes of like Tony and that yourself and that winning All Irelands.
They've nearly forgot about us now at this stage.
But every team, every club
has.
do have comes in spasms.
Yeah.
And there's teams that clubs that get 10 years out, but could take them another 10 or maybe a lot more to come back again.
To build again.
Yeah.
I think sometimes too you can't determine how good a player or bad he is by a medal, really, because I would look in the last while at Willie Dorn, I'd look at Kieran Kenny, Andrew Kenny, the Kennys, because there's a heap of, but you know, and you could name that, and they were every bit as good a men that ever wore a Buffers Alley jersey. Just and they would have fitted into the 70s team, or they'd fit. And it's just I do think you know, things will come back up, but you know, you won't win forever. Manchester United didn't win their, you know, they came to an end. Liverpool came to an end. So it's just sport, I think, really, isn't it?
And just keeping it there as
You know,
long as you can.
There's kind of no answers why it happens.
Yeah.
You know,
I
you
suppose-
slip, and
Yeah.
it's like if you fall down a ladder, you nearly always fall to the bottom.
Well, if you're at
And
the
it takes
top,
you a long
see
time
there's
to
only
go
one
back
way
up
down.
to the top
Yeah.
again.
I
You know?
suppose it'd be foolish not to mention the fact that like Tony was a major star, not only of Buffers Alley and Wexford, but like a national star. And maybe Tom, you might be better to talk about than the two lads.
Boys be given out to him. well, you see, I suppose it definitely did spur a generation in Buffers Alley, and it's not said. I think in '76, Buffers Alley had 6 players on the Wexford panel, and probably could have had another couple of players. You know, my father have often said Bill, Joe, Bill Murphy. They should have had longer career. You know, maybe to a certain extent, Bill, it was that we weren't as fashionable a club in the '60s. And that helps you to get on teams. But I think it was a big help to us in that time, the 76, 77 All-Ireland was very important for the youngsters coming that time, where you had Paddy Kavanagh, Colin Tony Dorn, you had Henry McButler, and you had Father Casey, all in the one club, in the one field training, that you knew that you're watching him in Crow Park. And that's certainly, and Tony is kind of, I suppose you mentioned him a little bit differently. I always told the story about the high ace van pulling up outside our house when the jerseys were on the line, and 4 or 5 lads, just I don't know what county they were from, hopped out, wanted to get away with the 14 Buffers Alley jersey. One of them put it on it, handed to the next lad. The 5 of them wore it, hopped back in, no phones, anything, but they went home saying they wore Tony Dorn's jersey. Like, so at the time he was the most famous hurler and you know in the country at the time. Like, everybody, you go even now, and that does help. I mean, the Nicky Rackard effect, even though there was great hurlers in Radnor, that has a huge effect on a club as well, and there's no doubt about that. And
it's just like Ballyhale at the moment.
Yeah.
They had that Henry Shefflin.
The TJ Reid, we were very lucky, but I mean, it's just, and I think the big thing for, unlike Ronaldo or World Cups, we were able to touch our heroes, really. You know, we were kind of, you'd nearly be able to talk to them for an hour, like, you know, and it definitely was an inspiration to everyone in the club, I think, you know.
And naturally Tony was a brother to you, but he was a superstar to everyone else, and probably maybe superstar to you as well, no doubt.
Oh, we criticised him. We often told him what he was. And not that he told us too.
And would there have been much sort of callers like Tom has just mentioned there, or people, you know,
thieves?
Yeah.
They didn't steal the jersey, they only
Ah,
tried
yeah,
it off.
there actually would have been people calling that time and all, but some of the best matches we ever had, we had them in the Archer, they were at the back of the house, we were all little lads. It always ended up in a row.
We had a match every day at dinner time. And generally, Colin and I used to play Tony and Colin.
And me.
Or Joe.
Yeah, because oldest and youngest
Yeah.
played the two
And there was
individuals.
an apple tree in the middle of the
And there was
beach.
that's right, there was an apple tree in the middle of it. But
That was the referee.
There was a farmer had land right at the back of where we used to be hurling. And Peter was his name. Peter'd be watching, you know, peeping.
He'd be up for the term listening to us.
But anyhow, it always ended up in a row anyhow. But see, I'd get the ball and I'd carry it and I'd draw one of the boys and slip it to Colin, and of course he'd bury it. But this was to carry on anyhow. But this day anyhow, got roof anyhow. And I said, "Will you shut up," I said to Joe, that Peter was probably peeping through the hedge. And with that, I looked and here was Peter, and he's peeping out under a scalp. But Joe gave me an answer on the minute I said it. He said, "Oh, if Peter." And he turned around to the hedge and he said, "Is that right, Peter?" And here was Peter looking in.
So the days in the yard were every bit as competitive as the days
Oh,
in the
they
field.
were rougher at times.
But the same Peter, anyhow, he went to Wexford Park one day. We played Owlert in the county final. The year we won in '75, and when we won, Peter got overexcited and he took a fly for the dressing room and he ran into the gate on the way out. And he got several stitches in his forehead.
So got for people.
They used to talk to Laura about, you know, the training in Wexford, or Kilkenny training, that it was, but the Buffers Alley training now was fairly saucy as well. Like, you know, there was no holds barred, and it wouldn't be unusual maybe to see a Dorn falling out with a Dorn on the pitch when we'd be down in the pitch training or whatever, you know. But it was ferocious, really. And I think there was a ferocious passion for hurling in Buffers. Like even, you know, I would have got it from my father and that, but I think one thing that struck me the other day, I was just looking around, but we had two goalkeepers in 50 years, which just shows a dedication. That's Seamus Kavanagh and Henry Butler before him. But I was just saying that people just gave their whole lives. Like, I mean, I wasn't a farmer, but I know there was hay left in the field to go and play hurling matches. It didn't matter about the weather. Like, you know, hurling was just everything. And you know, and the family thing was a great thing as well. Like, I mean, even a bit later in years, it was a big thing to be able to pull 2 or 3 brothers out of one family. It does give a help to a team, like, you know.
But that time, there would never be a backbiting or anything among players or anything.
Yeah.
I never heard one play. Now, at the present time, not too bad, but you'd hear players criticising players and the selectors would be wrong, but that time there was never a selector criticised, there was never a player criticised by anyone involved. I think that was a big thing.
Helped in the
They were
harmony.
just one unit, and that's what you have to have. If you've anything else going on, you're going nowhere.
That was different times too, you know.
It was a kind of a collective unit. You know, any issues the alley had, they had it with the opposition, but and they had a good few issues at times with the opposition. But I always remember my father. There weren't like tournaments were a big thing in the 70s and 80s. But I always remember they played. You surely remember Joe and Bill, but the Clover Meads tournament down in Waterford.
Yeah, well, we weren't invited back there.
No, I think that was the last day. I think we were.
We had awful battles.
We were left out of Kilmacud 7-a-sides for 4 or 5 years there as well.
We played in Polbury as well there, just up from the hotel there, you know, Tom, in Waterford. Who did we play? Aaron's own pitch. I remember playing Ballygunner in it. We played in, what was this happened? We couldn't play county players. The Leinster final was coming the following Sunday. Well, anyhow, we played Ballygunner anyhow, and oh God, there was a lot of chaps, lads playing now. I say it had been around the start of Pat Lacey and Mick Sweeney, some of those fellas.
Yeah.
But Ballygunner was creasing us anyhow, but we got anyhow. There was a row coming up to half time anyhow, Riz. And yeah, a man was refereeing it.
Noel Dalton.
Noel Dalton, he was a Mentor County referee. And he abandoned out in the gate. Now, I remember well the Ballygunner boys going after him and trying to get him back. No. But we got to come back anyhow, and there was only a minute to go till half time. So it was decided to get another fella into referee, a fella by the name of Sullivan. He refereed inter-county after as well. But your man got into referee anyhow, and he gave the greatest lecture of all at half time. The first man that done anything was gone. I remember with Martin Casey playing, but he was a county man at the time, but he was only a sub. So I had played him, but the minute the ball was thrown in, he pulled above the ball, and he flattened the fella, sent off. So we battled it out, and we got anyhow. I think we lost by a point, but now we got to come up. It was Munster Council because of the match was in Munster, was dealing with it. And Seamus Power of Waterford, he was a former Waterford county player. I think he was Munster secretary. And he worked with me Kinsley on Waterford. There was a bit of an advantage. But he said that match was abandoned. And Dalton hadn't sent in any report. And he said, sure, anything that took place after that was null and void. So
Jesse escaped.
So the match was refixed for Polbury again. And we went back down to Polbury to play Ballygunner now. And all County Waterford must have been in it. Oh Lord, we talk about crowds in Patrick's Park. It was packed. And of course we had all the boys. And we beat Ballygunner out the gate. But we had a team the next time.
Yeah.
We had a crowd of chaps the first time. But everyone in Waterford was that.
Well, Waterford, I don't know what happened that day in the Clover Meads. Well, I kind of have an idea what happened, but my father would have always kind of, the lads are they're fighting again, and he'd be going mad, Joe, you know, be scratching the head, and came home anyway, and it was a Good Friday that game was played, but there was sandwiches and all after it. But anyway, he came home and my mother asked him how did the lads get on. He says, I'm going no more, he says, and he's scratching his head. He says, they bet everyone in the field, he says, and they'd make on a Good Friday, he says. I'm not going anymore, he says. So he used to be a bit perturbed now. He was a very passionate man, but we used to get into an odd battle that time, I think, you know.
We used to go to Mooncoin, was another great place for tournaments.
Yeah.
Now we hadn't any big rows in
No big
Mooncoin.
crowds down there.
Mooncoin and Carrigan Sewer, Davin Park.
But sure, with the way championships and no local leagues and stuff, you're only crying out to play in
But if
tournaments.
we hadn't had
See,
in them
tournaments are a
years,
thing of the past now.
you had an Echo Shield maybe used to be played in March, April. And then if the county team was involved, there'd be no championship matches. So we used to spend the summer going to Kilkenny and Waterford and these places. But it probably made us, in a way.
And if you look back on all the, we'll say, county titles or big days, I'm going to ask the three of you the same question. Would there be any one that stands out as more satisfying maybe than another, or were they all equally so?
1975 with Ben Ownard.
Well,
I think that was that would have been my most satisfying one, you know, because the hype was fairly hectic at that stage.
And we were underdogs, Joe, too.
And we were underdogs by a mile, yeah.
They were at Newer
We had, you know, we played all. Owlert had beaten everyone that year. They'd beaten the Harriers and they'd beaten Ratnewer, and they were mad hot favourites. Now we were struggling a bit, and so we did produce a good day, and we won, you know.
But
Would you have a different one, or would it be the same?
I think we played Ratnewer in the county final. We're 10 points down at half time, and we come back and got a draw. I thought that was one of our best displays ever.
That was the year we won the
Yeah,
club championship.
We won the club championship after it
Yeah.
now. I think that was our best display. We got a draw out of it, and we beat him in the replay and beat him handy. Beat him well. They lost Jimmy Houlihan, who was one of the top men early on in the replay. And of course that was a big disadvantage to them. But
Well, we lost Mahi Foley as well. though,
yeah,
the
yeah.
same
But
match,
on the
so,
day, I
you know.
think we were that drawn match was our best match. I always thought, and it was great hurling.
75 might have been as memorable for you, Bill, was it?
I got the line that day.
Bill got the line that day.
What did you do, Bill?
Obviously, Jimmy Pender disagreed, and boys ended up on the line.
That's right. You threw a few right hooks, Bill, that day.
Is it true, lads, or is this apocryphal? Is it true that there used to be guys lined up to ring opposition opponents in the middle of the night before matches to wake them?
Never heard
That
of
total nonsense.
No,
it.
never
I
heard
never
of it.
heard of it, Peter. No,
Yeah.
no.
Never heard of it.
Well, we'll investigate it. What was is there any standout moment for you, Tom?
Well, I suppose the one Bill is talking about, the 88 final, I thought we heard very well. But being the year I was captain in 89, again, Owlert, sorry, Lar, but
You're in big trouble.
you're in
here.
big trouble over there. But the 89 final, the first day came to a kind of, I suppose, a premature end. There was a bit of a schmozzle, which I better not put my hands up.
There's a video of it anyway.
There's a video of it, yeah. So that came to a premature end, and then it came to a replay, and there were two great teams as well.
Were you involved in that?
Not at all, Joe, no. They were picking on me again.
I'm afraid you were.
But they kind of came to the replay. It was a draw after the replay, and I don't think I've ever seen a bigger crowd in Wexford Park. I think Pat French told me after there was an official 12,000 people there, but kids were allowed. He reckoned there was about 16,000 people in Wexford Park for the replay.
That went
But
extra time.
That went extra time then again, and nobody could get the better of another one. And it was important to us from the point of view, we were All Ireland club champions in 89, and then we didn't really want to lose a county final the same year. And with all respect, and it is with respect to Owlert, we didn't want to lose to Owlert in the county. And then the fact that I was captain, I suppose, that one stuck with me. But the other game that I thought probably the best performance I've ever seen from a Buffers Alley team was we played Kinnity up in Leinster Club final, our first ever Leinster Club final in 85.
Yeah.
And they had 7 of the Offaly team that won the All Ireland that year, the Coughlins, the Johnny Flaherty, the Corrigans, very, very good team.
The man centre back, Pat Delaney.
Pat Delaney,
Delaney, yeah,
and
yeah.
we literally bet them out to get. I think they had hammered the Shamrocks from Kilkenny in the semi-final. Were underdogs, and I think it was 3-12 to 9 points or something. But it was that they were the two, I think, brilliant performances from the alley.
And we were in hard luck. We didn't win the All Ireland that year after.
We kind of left it behind
blew
us.
it a bit now, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
Yeah, you'll win them, so you'll win some and you'll lose some. You'll have lucky wins and you'll have unlucky
Losses.
losses. And you just put one against the other, they'll work out. Yeah.
And there was another county final that had a tinge of sadness as well. It was in 1976.
76, yeah.
That's right.
Tom Butler.
Died in the dressing room at half time.
He's a guy who would have been very involved at the
He
time.
was repairing me that day at half time. He was bandaging up my wrist. I got a belt on the wrist. And I said to Tom, and he was bandaging me, I said, "What are you doing with the oilskins on you today, Tom?" Well, he says, "I'm keeping the clothes clean for tonight." It was a bit mucky, you know, but it was a fine day. But I went out in the corridor to go out. The lads were all gone out in front of me, and Tom fell behind me, and I went back, and a couple of the officials of the had become referees that time, hadn't they? Yeah.
That's right, yeah.
Larry Byrne and Mark Swedman, and someone else were coming in and says, go ahead, we'll take care of him." Which poor Tom was gone.
There was an irony there, Joe, that I was 11 years of age, but I think Pat.
You were saying that
Pat,
you were behind me. Yeah.
I was behind you. Pat Lacey. I think Pat Lacey got stitched at half time of that game as well. But I was waiting, talking to Pat, but I was walking out, and sadly Tom fell in front of me. And I remember Joe coming out of the toilet, but we didn't realise, because I always remember Joe saying, "Tom, are you okay, Tom?" And I think Tom said something, "All right, Joe, all right." And you went ahead, and, you know, I remember the dressing room then after it. I was only a young fella, and the Butlers are such magnificent Buffers Alley people, and Tom was such a character. He was the uncle of the butler. It was the saddest. The cup was on the middle of the table, deadly silence, and you know it was the most unreal scenario where you've just won a county final, and yet the sadness was unbelievable. But it was, you know,
it's a bit of a coincidence, the same team and everything, you know.
It was very, very sad, and
very unusual to have something similar happen twice. I suppose.
Tom was a great was a great Alley supporter, a great Gael now, really, you know.
I used to go to the dogs with him, you know. He'd bring me to the dogs with my father, and I'd be after winning a few bob, you know. I was only a young fella, and Tom would always say to me, "Stay away from the betting." He says, "You'll come home without darts in your trousers some night." He said, that'll be the end of you betting, you know. But there were, do you know what? When you look back, weren't there some great characters?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And sadly, there's so many not with us, really, you know.
And when it came time to stop playing, I know we mentioned that you retired and unretired plenty of times. Maybe you did the same
8
bit,
times,
did you?
I think. That's right.
Well, it could have been 7 anyhow, alright.
Was it just something that happened naturally, or did you just decide someday, I'm finished now, that'll do? Or
I don't know, really. Yeah, you'd know you weren't. You'd ease out. Maybe play a bit of junior or something like that, you know.
yeah,
I know I played junior B. I think the last match I played was in the goal, or a junior team, and that was the only time I've ever. That was my 15th position. I had played in every position on the field.
I always said being a junior B selector was the most dangerous job in the club because you'd wind up playing nearly every day. I remember going to Coolgranny one night to play in some old match, and I think we'd only 14, but I don't know, I was a fair age at the time. Myself and Sonny Fortune was the full forward line anyhow.
just the two of you.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Shem Hagan was playing on me, and Shem was, you know, a really lively athletic fella at the time. He used to take flies out. I remember saying to him early on, "Annie, you go ahead out, I'll wait here for you to come back."
I remember being a selector, Tom would be a selector, Joe, but Buffers Alley would have had a good football teams over the years, but I was a junior B football team, but Mick Butler was playing full forward. We'd only 14, but I think I must have been the only one that was hardly there, and I ended up manager anyway on the night. But Mick came out about 15 minutes into the second half and asked me to take off one of our players, and I said, sure, we don't have any subs, Mick. He says, I don't care, take him off, we'd be better without him, he says. So, but it's funny, just I know it's changing, but Buffers Alley would have won intermediate football titles in 74 and 89, and I remember actually the 74 title, Martin Lyons got a penalty. Martin was only 16, got a penalty in the last second. We were only a point down, but Martin buried it in the net. But I remember John Doyle grabbing him by the arm and saying, if you would have missed that, he said, you wouldn't have been allowed this field. Now, most people would be going over, clubs would be going over and say, well done for scoring it. But he was telling them that, but we had a very good football team that time. And even 89, we had a lot of very good footballers in 89. We actually had the Duffrey, I know you had the boys on the couch here a couple of weeks ago, but the 7 in a row Duffrey team, we had a quarter final. We were 3 points up with about 4 minutes to go with 14 in Belfield with 14 men. We had only 14 men, which wasn't unusual first, but we had only 14 men.
Something happened to her that day, wasn't it?
Was it? No. This was about say in the early whatever
90 or 91.
90, yeah. And it was Paddy Donoghue got sent off. Yeah. And I remember Barry, who we haven't mentioned, but Lord mercy on him, they had brought in this thing about the sideline kick. And you couldn't hop it, you'd take it out of your hand, but you couldn't hop it. So we got a sideline kick with about 3 minutes to go, and Barry hopped it, and before he knew where he was, I think it was Noel Fitz, took the ball off and kicked it in, the ball was in the net. We were beaten by a point, but we actually had the Duffrey beaten. We probably came as close as any team to stopping them, their 7 in a row, Not saying we would have won it, but and even that 74 football team, you had a great football team that time.
What was that, junior, intermediate?
It was intermediate, but the Sarsfield, remember, in Belfield.
I've nearly as many football medals as hurling medals.
And where's football in
Junior B,
now?
Junior A and intermediate football.
But now you see it's different. That time we were playing fellas 16 and 17 and 18, and they were getting in and playing with adults. And they all come into county men, Tom included here. And now, this year now, an under 18 won't be allowed to play adult in the county. I don't know, there's something terrible going on. Or what is the thinking?
We seem to be trying to choke ourselves with rules and regulations, don't we?
Oh yeah.
They're like those under 18s now.
Which they're going to do away with some small clubs with those kind of regulations, that would depend on the 3 or 4 18-year-olds, and they're not going to have teams, and that's it.
I know in our club we played 15 and 16. I played at 15, and Tom here, Tony, Mick Butler, all them fellas played at 15 and 16, played adult. And I tell you, adult hurling that time was tough, very tough, tougher than it is now. There were third man tackles in it, I tell you what, you could put to sleep. And now they're not let play. And now this year now, under 18s won't be let play. Now they'll lose out in minor early on and go, where are they gone for the year? Yeah. They're gone. Yeah.
You see,
might never come back.
The rules bill seem to be, and I'm not saying but they seem to be made for the elite player.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh, totally.
But they're not and there's only a certain amount of elite players.
But all the elite players and top players were playing when they were 16 and 17. Where are they going to get them now? They won't get them till 19 or 20. A lot of them will be gone by then. I think the GA has killed myself.
But you still enjoy going to the matches anyway, lads? You're still very regulars in...
yeah.
We're going on time, yeah.
In the field every night probably, or still...
Yeah, but there's an awful lot of people now that's gone now with this ticket situation, and that you have to plan you're going to the match. You don't say at the last minute, God, I'll go down, it's a grand evening, I'll go down to the field of the match. Now you have to have a ticket to get in the gate.
He's not entitled to the
pass. And
pass.
an awful lot of people, an awful lot of fellas...
I wouldn't be up to that age yet either.
An awful lot of fellas wouldn't be using phones or anything else. And I was talking to one fella here recently, he said he never went to a match last year.
It is a bit tricky. It becomes an extra hurdle for for someone who's not comfortable using it to cross, I suppose.
Yeah.
Well, Peter, you'll have to get Joe on the internet. Joe doesn't have the internet. Couldn't believe when you told me
No,
that. So you've never heard Peter's commentary?
I've never used internet since it was from the time I gave up working.
There you go now.
Sure, there's.
We'll give him a fuzzy egg, we get a
I
lifetime
don't know,
free
there's-
streaming or something to be given out, I'd say.
I don't know. There's a lot to be said for it too. There's a lot of stuff you can end up being consumed by the phone and being consumed by what's online and forget about the
You
rest
do
of life.
still read the papers every day and
No, front to
sports
back,
pages, front to back.
Yeah.
It's a good way of keeping in touch with any, I suppose, isn't it?
Tom, the question that I asked the lads about the last days or how it came to retiring, or was it a difficult thing?
Yeah, to be honest with you, it was in or around the time my father passed away, and I remember actually, which was a lovely thing. But Peary Butler's number 11 in Buffer's Alley, but I took number 11 for a few years, but I'd never take it from Peary because he was just the ultimate number 11 to hurl with, you know, and but there was number 11 jersey put into the coffin with my father when he was buried in that, you know, and it was kind of shortly after that I stopped hurling with the Alley. I actually don't know why I stopped. I know I was near 40 years of age or whatever, but I was almost kind of thinking you have to give the young lads a chance. So I had decided I wasn't going to hurl anymore after that particular year. I got involved with the team the year after, but then about 3 years after I retired, Jimmy Kennedy arrived to get me to play a bit of Junior B, and just played 1 year Junior B then the 3 years because I was eligible to play it because I hadn't played for 3 years. So, but I had decided when I was giving up playing senior, I said that was the end of it. But nothing replaces it, Laura or Peter. You know, it's just you just love it. You actually think it's going to last forever, but it doesn't, and that's why I'd say to remember
very quick.
It does, Joe. You know, and I remember a man. Pat Hartigan, I remember one day, and I was talking to him. He would have been a man I'd admire over the years from Limerick, and he just said, "Don't forget, the minute you take down the Knicks for the last time," he says, "that's it," he said, and he says it'll be very hard, and he's right. Like, you know, I think if I had it again, I would have liked to maybe instead as a sub. I would have decided to stay as a sub for a year or two because we came close enough to final the year after against Rathnewer, and kind of, you know, you were standing there on the sideline with your clothes on you. Maybe 5 minutes you did, but then that's where does it end? Then you could be there for 60 years of age thinking, you know, 5 minutes. But, yeah, but I think it was 82 to about 25 years hurling with the Alley seniors. So I was lucky, and I really have to say I was so lucky. Like, I mean, the players I came on to play with were just amazing. Like, you know,
without the GAA, without the hurling and the bit of football and all, it would have been a very empty life.
Yeah.
You know, really, wouldn't it?
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sure still something to look forward to now. We'll have Wexford matches starting again in January, and we'll have the fields be back busy again, and we'll all go again and do the same thing over and over again.
We will. Very same thing again. Yeah, we are.
Well, lads, I'd like to thank you on behalf of myself and Laura for joining us on the couch for this Christmas special, and we hope that everyone across the county who's watching in has had a good Christmas day and enjoyed the festivities and all the rest of it, and we hope you enjoyed joining us, lads.
We did.
Our pleasure.
Thanks
very much.
Yeah, extend the season's good wishes to everyone. And hope we'll be all here next year.
Sing a song now.
On the Couch is sponsored by Murphy's Furniture, who've been supporters of Wexford GAA for many years. Murphy's have 2 shops in Wexford, one in Gorey and one in Wexford Town. Along with a huge range of furniture, sofas, beds and mattresses, Murphy's are now launching their carpet and flooring ranges across their 5 shops this December. They also have stores in Carlow, Naas and Dublin. Anthony and Nicky Murphy are proud supporters of Wexford GAA and are delighted to now offer flooring to the people of Wexford